Turks, Jake Huger, Anna Kasparian with you guys. Later, Wordle will save lives. Republicans will back bullies, and everybody will have a little bit of gazpacho soup. Fun and exciting show for you guys tonight. Now, I hand it off to legendary newscaster Anna Kasparian.
Unfortunately, we have to begin with Dave Chappelle disappointing us further because the transgender stuff just wasn't enough. And now he's trying to stop affordable housing, and he's succeeding. So let's discuss.
I don't know why the village council would be afraid of litigation from a $24 million a year company while they ekes out the $65 million a year company. I cannot believe you would make me audition for you. You look like clowns. I am not bluffing. I will take it all off the table. That's all.
Comedian Dave Chappelle, unfortunately, put a stop to a construction project that would have developed affordable housing in the community that he lives in, Yellow Springs, Ohio. Now, he made his objection to this project clear, and as you can see, pretty forceful about how he objected to the project. And it wasn't the first time he objected to the construction of affordable housing in this community. And obviously, let me be clear, there are other community members who attended that meeting who were against it as well. Now, just to give you some background and context, the village initially asked for the development to advance affordable housing in the village, including an area that the village would later be able to develop into affordable housing, as well as more duplexes and townhomes. After complaints from numerous residents, including comedian Dave Chappelle, Village Council voted 2-2 with one abstention on the revised planned unit development zoning. So what does that mean exactly? Well, the developer here, known as Oberer Homes, can move forward with a new development in Yellow Springs, but without the affordable housing component initially promised to the village. That means the zoning reverts to what was previously approved. 143 single family homes on the lot, with the homes starting at about $300,000 according to village documents. Initially, the development would have included the land that would be allocated specifically for the affordable housing to be built at a later time, which, to be honest with you, that wording I was a little skeptical about. Like, why not get started with the affordable housing immediately? Why are they planning on getting to that later? You know, that raised a few red flags for me. But members of the community, including Dave Chappelle, seem to have a problem with the idea of developing that affordable housing, and also, housing that would include duplexes, fourplexes. You get the point.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess he's jumped the shark. So this is terrible. So he's enraged that people that aren't incredibly wealthy might live next to him. So he won. Congratulations, Dave. So now there's going to be 143 single family homes, and only single family homes. If you can't afford a home like that, that's your problem, not Dave's problem. And each of those houses start at least $300,000, okay? And so no poor people for you, all right? So congratulations, Dave Chappelle, champion of the incredibly wealthy and the business owner, CEO Dave Chappelle throws up. By the way, that's exactly the kind of threats ExxonMobil and other companies do. Hey, if you don't give us exactly what we want, we'll end our business with you. So he must be so proud. And then what was that stupid line about, I'm not gonna audition for you? Hey, it isn't about you, jerk. It's about people who could have actually had a nice home there. And by the way, even for your side, right? This is called democracy. Okay, you participated, I'm happy about that. That's the only thing I'm happy about in this story. But he makes it sound like, oh, the city council's doing this to him, and they made him go and speak there. Like, when they should already know that a wealthy baron has already spoken. How dare you have me come out here and audition for you?
So
I'm gonna pull my $65 million from you. Do you know how wealthy I am? Shut up, Chappelle. You've become disgusting now.
Yeah, well, let me give you context in regard to what he means, right? When he brings up the $65 million, he also mentioned, I think, $24 million in litigation. I'm guessing that he's referring to possible litigation if the council votes to undo what they had originally planned on doing, which is building the affordable housing along with multifamily homes, so duplexes and all of that. He's basically saying, look, if you're worried about that litigation, cool, but remember, I'm investing $65 million into this community, and he's doing so by building a restaurant, the Firehouse Eatery, and also a comedy club. And so, look, this is getting a lot of attention because of the fact that it's Dave Chappelle, but this is very commonplace among city council meetings, town meetings. You'll have members of the community, typically individuals who are affluent, who have significant amounts of money, come in and, of course, oppose any type of affordable housing that's being proposed and make threats like this, right? We're gonna take our business elsewhere and what have you. And that scares city leaders. Like, they're terrified of that. They're terrified of losing those types of investments. Also, just to be very specific about what the original plan was, the development that council voted on Monday night would have included 64 single family homes rather than the now 143 single family homes, 52 duplexes and 24 townhouses with an additional 1.75 acres to be donated to the community for affordable housing to be built later. That was the initial plan. Now, all of that is scrapped. Instead of the duplexes, instead of the affordable housing, the only thing that they're gonna build is the 143 single family homes. And other community members spoke up and said that they were concerned about congestion. There was one concern that I thought was legitimate that was brought up, and it was the concerns about how that original deal would also lead to an HOA in the area, which I don't care if I'm in a condo, I don't care if I'm in a house, I don't care if I'm living in a shack in that community. If anyone proposes an HOA when I don't have to deal with an HOA, I'm against it. But I'm just keeping it real. But that was the only legitimate concern, if you ask me, because
they're not gonna make people who already have single family homes in the neighborhood join an HOA.
The concept of the Young Turks means the audience, they are the Young Turks. They are the go-getters. They are the ones making the emphatic change happen in their local community. The reality is that we've always, young and the not so young, we've always cared about news. But when you do not see the messengers of the news look like you, when they do not share your experiences, exposures, and environment, and there's a disconnect between you and the news. I lecture in mass communications. One thing I tell all of my students, there is no such thing as non-biased news. It never has been. Non-biased news has always been an illusion. Let's go back to the 60s and 70s, where people would say that was the purity of non-biased news. News has a segment. That segment has a time. That time, you must do your story and be finished. That means the producer, the writer, the orator has to take out what they don't think is important and only leave in what they believe is important. They have a limited time to tell the story. They do not have time to tell everybody's version or everybody's side. And they get to choose the facts that they bring to you, as well as the nuance, which really is a word for opinion, that they bring to you, the context they bring to you. So we've always had a level of bias in news. Here's the issue. The issue is to not deceive individuals as if you don't have some level of opinion with your news commentary. And that's what TYT has never done. They've always been authentic in their approach to progressive ideology and their news analysis and political breakdown. And I think that's how you actually win the heart and soul of individuals who are consuming information from you, because now they see themselves in you.
Every part of this is nonsense, okay? You're not gonna get retroactively put in an HOA. It's just totally made up. The congestion, it's what every hateful group says. So I remember in my hometown of East Brunswick, New Jersey, they were going to put in a Hindu temple, and instantly everybody said, "Oh, congestion. Oh, we're so worried about congestion." No, you're not. You're worried about a Hindu temple.
So look, I think in that case, you could make the point that it's hateful. But I don't think it's always hateful. I do think that the argument comes from a place of selfishness, right? Of not wanting to experience any type of what they feel would be an inconvenience, even though it would actually make so many people's lives better, and I would even venture to say would not make their lives inconvenient in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I got it. And by the way, whenever there's changes, there's a little bit of inconvenience. It's true. And especially in a city like LA, there's tons of congestion everywhere. I understand that. In East Brunswick, there was no congestion in that part of town. I knew exactly what they were talking about. It was nonsense. Most of the time, it's not about hate. And in this case, it's not either. This is about just NIMBY, not in my backyard. And look, guys, I know why it happens, and you should know why it happens, so you know they're not monsters. I understand the point of view. They're like, hey, look, I got a house here, and it's, make up a number, $485,000. And you put poor people within a 5-mile perimeter of me, I think it's gonna go down to $435,000. Now, most of the time, that is way overblown. But could that happen? Theoretically, it could. And then the guy says, wait a minute, I lost $50,000. That matters a lot to me, okay? That's why people get super angry about any type of affordable housing in their town. And that's why we can't have affordable housing anywhere, because everybody gets selfish and goes, not in my backyard, not in my backyard. The reason why I'm more mad at Chappelle is because he doesn't have to worry about home prices.
Totally.
He doesn't have to worry, okay, what, did your $10 million house become a $9.5 million house? I don't know anything about his house, but you know that Dave Chappelle's not hurting for money. He's talking about putting in $65 million into these businesses. He's got plenty of money, so if anyone shouldn't do NIMBY, it's Dave Chappelle.
Cenk, that's such a good point. It's such a good point. I hadn't even thought about that. And to be honest with you, oftentimes when I think about the NIMBY folks, I don't really consider the fact that they're worried about a drop in their property values.
Yeah.
And look, I think that that is a symptom. I'm not agreeing with it, and I'm definitely not defending it, but it is a symptom of a larger problem that we see in this country, where literally the only way Americans were able to build wealth, and by the way, this isn't even an opportunity for people anymore, but the only one way that Americans could build wealth in this country was through buying a home and building equity. And so that's why they're so protective of it. Like, I understand the logic behind it, not defending it, but it shows that there's a problem when people just see this one avenue to build wealth for themselves and their family, and there's no other opportunity available. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. And so it's an incredibly selfish act. And if you're in the middle class, I understand why you do it, even though it's deeply frustrating. But if you're in the, in the class that Dave Chappelle is in terms of wealth, it's inexcusable. And it's clear now that he has rich man's disease. And so this is exactly what billionaire NFL owners do. Well, I could take my team to another town unless you build a massive stadium for free for me. I'm gonna take all the profits, and I want the taxpayers, poor, middle class, and otherwise, to pay for my stadium that I will take profits off of, because I am rich and I deserve everything, right? And I mentioned ExxonMobil earlier because, by the way, there's a very similar case, a little bit different, but you'll get the point. Former CEO of ExxonMobil, Rex Tillerson, who was also Trump's Secretary of State for a short period of time, did fracking all across the country, made gazillions of dollars off of it as the CEO of ExxonMobil. When they were gonna do fracking near his house, he said, not in my backyard, fracking is dangerous. Oh, okay, so it's not dangerous when you do it in our backyard, but when all of a sudden it comes next to a rich man's house, and a guy who's made, I don't know if it's tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars from fracking, then turns around and says, not in my backyard. So congratulations, Dave Chappelle. Now you're in that category of people.
So Dave Chappelle responded to all the backlash he's receiving through a spokesperson. We'll get to that comment in a second. But I just want to note that this isn't the first time he has voiced his objection to the development of affordable housing in that community. In fact, according to the Dayton Daily News, in December of 2021, Chappelle noted He was invested or had invested millions of dollars in town and said he was adamantly opposed to it. If you push this thing through, he said, what I'm investing is no longer applicable, Chappelle said. Now, a spokesperson did respond to calls for some statement. There has been a lot of backlash. And here is what Carla Sims, the spokesperson, has to say. Dave Chappelle didn't kill affordable housing. Concerned residents and a responding village council killed a half-baked plan which never actually offered affordable housing.
Nonsense. Right. Lie.
There's more. Neither Dave nor his neighbors are against affordable housing. However,
lie.
They are against the poorly vetted cookie-cutter sprawl-style development deal, which has little regard for the community, culture, and infrastructure of the village. The whole development deal, cloaked as an affordable housing plan, is anything but affordable. 3 out of the 143 lots would have been for future affordable housing. The rest of the homes were to be priced between $250,000 and upward of $600,000 in Yellow Springs and in many other areas or places. This is not considered affordable housing.
So then, Dave, did you go and make it? I say Dave as if I know him, but I don't. I just want to be clear. But Chappelle, did you ever fight for affordable housing that was real affordable housing in your opinion? Did you ever make it clear before you got blowback that I'm actually for affordable housing, I just don't think this is affordable enough? Did you push forward that project? Did you ever explain that? Did you ever clarify that? No, you didn't. All you said is, I don't want no goddamn affordable housing near me. I'm rich now. I don't want the affordable housing near me. Put it next to other people, maybe poor people. So screw Dave Chappelle. Look, guys, these guys get in a bubble, right? And then they have other rich friends and they all get together and they're like, oh yeah, man. Being rich is, we're the victims. We should put him in that billionaire rich men crying compilation now, right? Oh no, the wealth estate tax. Oh, the wealth tax is the worst thing in the world. Oh, poor people or middle class people living next to you is the worst thing in the world. And they all agree. They're all like, oh yeah. And they slap each other's asses. Oh yeah, you're so right. Being rich is awesome. Being poor sucks. Let's kick him out of town. Shut up, Chappelle. Go and hang out with your right-wing rich friends now and enjoy that. No interest. Yeah. And by the way, it hasn't been funny in years and years. Like, people are laughing there. Why? Because he's a celebrity and you think he's gonna be funny. He was just yelling at poor people. What was funny about that?
All right, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, the latest twist in the congressional lawmakers engaging in insider trading, some of them are now speaking out very openly against any proposal that would ban them from trading individual stocks. We'll give you those details and more when we come back.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT.
The place is like 95% TYT on.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Tank and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
All the people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think, one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army, there might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
Across the map are going to be so tight and so close that it is likely going to be very difficult to call this on election night.
The twin forces behind the Biden candidacy, the billionaires and the Bolsheviks.
Arizona, 19 million. For the vice president, 9 million, a little over 9 million for President Trump.
We are desperate for Donald Trump to not be president anymore because he's fascist and is a threat to our democracy. And we said that from day one. Yes, we want Biden to beat Trump. Is that clear enough?
It is increasingly difficult for the American public to get any sort of truth.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that. People are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different ways. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry? Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Apparently we got a hype train going on Twitch. Ooh, keep it going, guys. Much love. Casper, go.
The one thing Democrats like Senator Tommy Tuberville and some Democrats agree on is corruption, including the ability to trade individual stocks. In fact, Tuberville was recently asked about proposed legislation that would ban members of Congress from being able to trade individual stocks. And you'd be surprised, right, that he is 100% against it. He's very transparent about how much he opposes it and says this: I think it's ridiculous. They might as well start sending robots up here. I think it would really cut back on the amount of people that would want to come up here and serve. And look, to be honest, that's kind of the point. If being a member of Congress is something that draws individuals because they know they'll have insider information and they can trade individual stocks, maybe we don't want those people representing individuals in their district or their state. He also says that, the truth is members of Congress, Cenk, they're really struggling. They're really struggling. He says, I've been surprised since I've been up here. We got people sleeping in their offices.
And, he's amazing because he's just kind of brazenly saying, like, I thought everybody here was rich like me. And I thought we were up here to get rich. And it turns out some people are sleeping in their office. What's wrong with it? What are they trying to represent the people? No, get out there, make some money, man. We got all this insider information. Tommy Tuberville is one of the most right-wing guys in Congress. And he's one of the biggest Trump supporters there are. He was an integral part of supporting Trump during the coup. And he's of the ideology that, yeah, of course I'm for the rich. I'm rich. Of course I'm gonna come up here and use everything to my advantage and take advantage of the suckers who elected me. Look, what do the people of Alabama want? Why did they elect me? Okay, make sure black people don't have rights and the rich get tax cuts. Well, that's what I'm doing. So mission accomplished. Now give me the money. Give me the money. And what are you gonna do? Defeat me in Alabama? Democrats aren't gonna win in Alabama. We just say, black people, boo! And you'll reelect me no matter how much of a crook I am.
So you shouldn't take what he says about members of Congress at face value. They are not poor. They are not struggling. The salary for a U.S. senator as of 2021 is $174,000. But that's nothing. That's just their salary. In fact, Congress has quite a few millionaires. Let's take a quick look at the richest senators according to data from 2018. And this is based on financial disclosures, which by law they are supposed to file. So Senator Rick Scott, $259 million in 2018.
He made most of that money ripping off Medicare, largest Medicare fraud in history. A total criminal is a senator from Florida.
True, but their wealth continues to grow. In fact, their wealth grows at a faster rate than other individuals invested in the stock market. They always beat the stock market, right? And the reason why is because they're privy to information that we are not privy to. And also, it's a huge conflict of interest because these are lawmakers who are supposed to make legislative decisions that would impact the very corporations and companies they're invested in. So do you think that they would pass a regulation, for instance, that's sorely needed, but would hurt the bottom line for these corporations? That would mean that the value of the shares they're invested in would go down and they would lose profits. So it's a huge problem. And yeah, let's go back to that graphic because Mark Warner, this is not a Democrat or Republican thing, right? You got Mark Warner, $214 million, he's a Democrat. Senator Mitt Romney, notoriously wealthy, $174.5 million. You have Senator Mike Braun, $136.8 million. Like, these are not hungry individuals, okay? Or not hungry in the way that we would think of, like where they're struggling and they need to sleep in their offices because they have no other choice. That's a joke. Now, he's also one of the biggest violators of the relatively toothless Stock Act. The Stock Act doesn't prevent them from trading individual stocks. They just have to disclose their stock trades. And apparently Tuberville has violated the Stock Act, which prevents members from using non-public information they learn in their official capacity for personal benefit. A whopping 132 times, accounting for $894,000. So he's got a dog in the fight, Jake.
Yeah, he's a right-winger, so he thinks I'm above the law. Right-wingers can just break the law anytime we want, and it won't matter. And in this case, he's right, because almost everybody in Congress is a criminal. So they're like, oh, why would we, if we punish Tuberville, we'd have to punish Nancy Pelosi. We're not gonna do that. Nancy Pelosi is one of the richest people in Congress, so is Dianne Feinstein. And they let everyone off, because if they prosecuted them, they'd have to prosecute themselves. So the Democrats are super happy to say, oh, Republicans, you didn't do anything wrong. Keep on robbing people with insider information. You know what the chances of a random group of people always beating the stock market is? 0.
Right.
Okay. No, the only way that you always beat the stock market, and not just one person, but a collection of people, is if you have information that other people don't have. You have an unfair advantage. By the way, that's not the free market. And right-wingers don't believe in the free market. They love a rigged market. Tuberville's like, oh, you rigged it to my advantage? Why would I give that up? Of course, I'm gonna rob you for more and more money. And so Richard Burr, by the way, made $1.6 million off the stock based on insider information on COVID. And you know what the Justice Department did? Nothing. They let him off. Why'd they let him off? Because he's among the elites. If they punish Richard Burr, they definitely have to punish Democrats.
Okay,
and they don't want to do that.
He is being investigated. So
no, the Justice Department announced in January that it would not file charges against him. Of course, investigated my ass.
Wow.
That was a cover your ass operation. Are we investigating Richard Burr? Oh yes, we are investigating him.
Wow.
Okay, Nancy Pelosi, we are really busy investigating him, right?
What a waste of time.
I know, Justice Department and Nancy Pelosi are not supposed to talk. Yeah. The Biden administration, filled with rich people who constantly do insider trading, are not gonna prosecute Republicans who do the same thing.
Well, we're not done yet, because there is a Democrat in the House of Representatives who also spoke out pretty openly about her objection to any legislation that would ban members of Congress from trading individual stocks. This time we're talking about Representative Elaine Luria, who is a very proud, moderate Democrat. And so while speaking to Punchbowl News, she said this: you know, I think the whole concept is BS, because I think that why would you assume that members of Congress are going to be inherently bad or corrupt? It's hilarious. So I'll show her why in just a second. She's obviously pretending like she doesn't know why, but the rest of her statement is, we already have the Stock Act, again, toothless, and all it really does is force them to disclose their trades.
Hey, clown. Tuberville just violated 132 times and nothing happened. You think you have the Stock Act? No, you're a liar, and I don't care that you're a Democrat. Oh, we have the Stock Act. There's no enforcement of it at all. It's a goddamn joke, and you know it.
The people that you're electing to represent you, it makes no sense that you're going to automatically assume that they're going to use their position for some nefarious means or to benefit themselves.
No.
So I'm very strongly opposed to any legislation like that. Well, look, what led to the Stock Act was the nefarious behavior of members of Congress. Now, the Stock Act is nothing to write home about. As I've mentioned a billion times, it doesn't really do much. It's toothless. There's no real enforcement mechanism, especially in the House of Representatives. And I want to remind you all of, again, what transpired in the lead up to the Stock Act.
Market moving information, and they're going to act on that information. I mean, information is king.
A groundbreaking 2004 study by a group of professors and researchers examined the records of US senators between 1993 and 1998. The study found that a portfolio tracking the stocks that the US senators bought during the same time period outperformed the market by 85 basis points each month. And a portfolio that tracked the stocks that the senators sold during the period lagged behind the market by 12 basis points. The study concluded that the senators knew appropriate times to both buy and sell their common stocks.
So that's an older study, but more recent studies have been done and similar findings come out, right? That members of Congress outperform the stock market. And when you look at Luria's portfolio, you'll get a better grasp in regard to why she's so against any policy that would ban this disgusting and corrupt behavior. Luria's net worth is more than $8.5 million, and she trades millions. Her 2020 filing shows that she had assets worth between $1 to $5 million separately in Facebook and computer design company Nvidia. She also had between $500,000 to $1 million invested in Netflix. She also has at least $652,000 and up to $1.38 million combined in Apple, Walt Disney, Snapchat, Navy Federal Credit Union, a pharmaceutical company, Navy Mutual Aid Association, and Alibaba. Luria and her husband Robert sold on March 31st, 2021, between $250,000 to $500,000 in Alibaba stock and purchased $250,000 to $500,000 of Uber stock the same day. Like, this is what they're engaging in. So let me just ask you guys, do you think that Luria and her husband are interested in any policy that would prevent them from investing in these companies that, again, Luria likely has a lot of information about and will make decisions about, especially when it comes to any type of regulation that could hurt these companies' bottom line?
Okay, so by the way, they passed the Stock Act under Barack Obama, and he pretended that it was historic. The press pretended it was historic. It was toothless. We said it at the time. All of his so-called financial reforms were toothless. They refused to jail any bankers. And Obama was a gift from the heavens for them. A guy who pretends to do something, actually does nothing, and helps them cover up their crimes. So that's why he's such a legend in corporate media, and they hyped him up to be a demigod. So now Luria, now she's got $1 million in Facebook. You think she's gonna break up Facebook? Cost herself money on that $1 million? She's not gonna break up Facebook when she owns $1 million in stock in Facebook. Everybody knows that. So when she comes out like, how dare anyone accuse us of corruption? Why would you assume that? First of all, it isn't about you. It's about human nature. If you've got millions of dollars on the line, even really, really good people will do the wrong thing, right? And you guys all take combined billions of dollars in corporate donations for your campaigns. The only people stupid enough to not think that that's corruption is people who work as reporters in Washington. The rest of us all know that that's organized, systemic corruption. Those corporations don't give you money for general welfare, they give you money to buy you. And it is a very effective investment because you never ever oppose your donors. And of course, aided and abetted by CNN, I'll get to that in a second. But guys, remember what these guys did a little while ago. On the filibuster, they said the Voting Rights Act, so that every American can vote, we can end the insane gerrymandering, return back to democracy, make sure that fascists don't take over this country. No, the filibuster is more important. Did you know that a couple months before that, they actually got rid of the filibuster for lifting the debt ceiling? Now, I think they should lift the debt ceiling. But wait a minute, I thought you said the filibuster was sacrosanct and you couldn't ever get rid of it for any policy and you couldn't make any exceptions, but you did make an exception. Why? Because if they didn't lift the debt ceiling, the stock market would have crashed. And all of them have millions of dollars in the stock market. They weren't gonna let their best friend and their own personal interest get in the way of that. So no voting rights for you, but millions for me.
Yeah, that's why I get irritated by the annual faux drama about the debt ceiling. It's like reporters either have short-term memory or just are, I don't know, but anytime you see like a drama unfolding about, ooh, are they gonna do it? Are they gonna lift the debt ceiling? Rest assured, they will lift the debt ceiling, report on something else. It's a waste of time. I'm not even kidding.
I don't know if reporters are schmucks or if they're in on it, but here, we have the CNN clip, right? Look, so this is how they hyped up Luria before. They're like, oh, the squad, they're getting a lot of attention, you know, AOC and the rest of the Just Democrats. So we'll pretend that there's another squad made up of conservative Democrats that people are really excited about.
Right, and they refer to them as the badasses. So let's take a look at that video.
Navy veterans Mikey Sherrill and Elaine Luria, Air Force veteran Chrissy Houlihan, ex-CIA officers Alyssa Slotkin and Abigail Spanberger. a band of sisters who bonded while storming the unfamiliar terrain of politics. Their previous service taught them to be fearless, which comes in handy now.
There's not a vertical chain of command structure, so
Well, there is, but obviously it sounds like you guys aren't following it.
No, but no one can fire us. I mean, except the people that elected us.
None of us came to Congress from a district that wants us to just sit here and be quiet and learn the ropes. They want us to engage, and they want change, and they want it now.
Oh yeah, lots of change, like maintaining a system of corruption that puts your own constituents at a severe disadvantage.
That was corporate media propaganda 101. That squad does not exist. It's not a thing. And what are they looking to change? They say, oh, we're looking to change things. No, you're not. You just said, don't change it. Don't change it. We're making money hand over fist. Don't change a goddamn thing. And they are so fearless. Fearless in what? Taking corporate money? Fearless in what? It's a literal question. Did they buck the system in any way, shape, or form? No, they always voted for the status quo. So CNN, we're not interested in your propaganda for the most corrupt politicians in America.
All right, now we move on to TOILETGATE, a story that made me roll my eyes, but we have a piece of evidence that might prove this to be true.
The concept of the Young Turks means the audience, they are the Young Turks. They are the go-getters. They are the ones making the emphatic change happen in their local community. The reality is that we've always, young and the not so young, we've always cared about news. But when you do not see the messengers of the news look like you, when they do not share your experiences, exposures, and environment, and there's a disconnect between you and the news. I lecture in mass communications. One thing I tell all of my students, there is no such thing as non-biased news. It never has been. Non-biased news has always been an illusion. Let's go back to the 60s and 70s, where people would say that was the purity of non-biased news. News has a segment. That segment has a time. That time, you must do your story and be finished. That means the producer, the writer, the orator has to take out what they don't think is important and only leave in what they believe is important. They have a limited time to tell the story. They do not have time to tell everybody's version or everybody's side. And they get to choose the facts that they bring to you, as well as the nuance, which really is a word for opinion, that they bring to you, the context they bring to you. So we've always had a level of bias in news. Here's the issue. The issue is to not deceive individuals as if you don't have some level of opinion with your news commentary. And that's what TYT has never done. They've always been authentic in their approach to progressive ideology and their news analysis and political breakdown. And I think that's how you actually win the heart and soul of individuals who are consuming information from you, because now they see themselves in you.
New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman details how Donald Trump allegedly tried to flush White House documents in the toilet. Now, she's detailing what she learned in this next clip. Let's watch.
I learned that staff in the White House residence would periodically find the toilet clogged. The engineer would have to come and fix it. And what the engineer would find would be wads of, clumped up wet printed paper, meaning it was not toilet paper. This was either notes or some other piece of paper that, they believed that he had thrown down the toilet. What it could be, Brianna, could be anybody's guess. It could be Post-its. It could be notes he wrote to himself. It could be other things we don't know, but it certainly does add, as you said, another dimension to what we know about how he handled material in the White House. We have known for several years, since my colleague Annie Carney broke the story, that Trump was ripping up pieces of paper and that his staff was having to tape it back together for archival purposes. This is how he has handled documents and pieces of paper all his life in terms of ripping them up. But this was something different, and it was not, as I was told, an isolated incident.
So this is part of the growing controversy involving Donald Trump either ripping up or doing away with official White House documents. These are documents that are supposed to be saved, maintained. The National Archives are supposed to keep track of this. In fact, recently they had to travel all the way to Mar-a-Lago in order to grab boxes, dozens of boxes of documents that Trump took with him from the White House to Mar-a-Lago. We covered that earlier. The toilet story, I just feel like anything involving Trump and a scandal or investigation, it has the same timeline, right? And it just gets more and more absurd and crazy, and then eventually it leads to nothing, which is why this story made me like roll my eyes. But what do you think, Jim?
Yeah, well, look, I think Trump had a fair excuse when he was asked to explain it. So let's watch what he had to say.
Dumps. They call them dumps, big, massive dumps in Michigan and Pennsylvania and all over. If you take a look at, you just take a look at just about every state that we're talking about, every swing state that we're talking about, and they did these massive dumps of votes, and all of a sudden I went from winning by a lot to losing by a little.
Okay. Oh, he meant for the ballots. I got you. Okay, so when he started talking about massive dumps on Pennsylvania, maybe Avenue, I thought maybe that was going to be his excuse. No, in reality, he actually put out a statement, and it was just as funny. He had misspellings in it, of course. He misspelled camouflage. It's not an easy word to spell. I don't care about misspellings, but what that shows you is this is the former president of the United States, and he doesn't have a single person who could just help him with a simple edit, right? And he said, oh, the documents with the archives, we had no problems at all, okay? We cooperated fully. Besides which, I looked into it, and I don't have to give him any of the documents back, and Clinton didn't either.
Yeah, we have those statements. Should I read them?
Sure, go ahead.
Well, in regard to the flushing of documents, he denied that, saying another fake story that I flushed papers and documents down a White House toilet is categorically untrue and simply made up by a reporter in order to get publicity for a mostly fictitious book. Which I gotta admit, I'm also getting very tired of the Trump-related books. Like, it's nonstop.
No, I got you,
yeah.
But this is almost definitely true because of another clip we're gonna show you in a little bit.
Right, the rest of his statement, or parts of it that I think are relevant, he said the media's characterization of my relationship with the National Archives is fake news. It was, I love how easy it is for him to just write anything off by saying it's fake news. It was exactly the opposite. It was a great honor to work with them to help formally preserve the Trump legacy. The papers were given easily and without conflict and on a very friendly basis, which is different from the accounts being drawn by the fake news media. He's been out of office for over a year. The National Archives went to Mar-a-Lago to retrieve the records and the documents about a month ago.
Yeah, so the next quote in his statement was, in fact, it was viewed as routine and, quote, no big deal. In actuality, I've been told I was under no obligation to give this material based on various legal rulings that have been made over the years. If there was no controversy about you giving the papers over, why did you ask for legal rulings on giving the papers over? He's so dumb. You can't say, hey, you know what? Oh, there was no controversy. I gave it and said, I've been checking for a year on my legal rights on keeping the papers. So apparently there was a controversy. And I'm not the guy who said it. You're the guy who said it, you schmucks. By the way, he also said, how about Hillary Clinton? Yeah, exactly. You ran a whole campaign saying, can you believe that she kept the emails? And then you keep the documents. Unreal. Then he said, you know, she got rid of a lot of the documents and acid washed the emails. There is no such thing as acid washing emails. You acid wash pants and jeans, not emails.
I mean, maybe he was speaking figuratively.
No, he doesn't know anything. So did he actually flush him down the toilet? And what does that mean? Well, when the story came up, Anna and I remembered, wait a minute, Trump had said something that just didn't make any sense near the end of his term. We're like, why is he randomly talking about toilets? Here, watch this clip.
We have a situation where we're looking very strongly at sinks and showers and other elements of bathrooms where you turn the faucet on in areas where there's tremendous amounts of water, where the water rushes out to sea because you could never handle it. and you don't get any water. You turn on the faucet, you don't get any water. They take a shower and water comes dripping out, just dripping out, very quietly dripping out. People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15 times, as opposed to once. They end up using more water.
10 times, 15 times,
Yeah.
huh?
So that was,
flushing.
Context is important. We tell you that a million times. That was in the middle of a completely different issue. It came out of left field and we're like, why is he talking about his bathroom problems? And it turns out it's because officials were going to Trump and saying, stop clogging up the toilets with the evidence you're trying to get rid of, okay? And so it's on at the top of his mind, even though none of us know it at the time when he was president. It's top of mind for him because officials are constantly telling him, stop flushing down national documents in the toilet. So he comes out in the middle of a question, and the toilets, it's got a problem, it's got a problem. You moron, why did you bother saying that publicly? Now it's obvious that that's what you were doing. And guys, I know right-wingers, you have no attachment to logic anymore. You hate the idea of someone being rational. But why would you flush papers down the toilet consistently? To keep them? Because you weren't worried about them? No, you do it to get rid of them. You know who does that? Someone who's guilty. It's so obvious if you weren't blind.
All right, well, we've got a fun story coming up after the break. Looks like Tomi Lahren and Geraldo got into a bit of an argument, a heated argument in regard to the truckers demonstrating in Canada. Don't miss that story. We've got videos and more. Come right back.
I've been at TYT, I believe, for the last 6 years.
5 years.
3 years now. 7 years.
4 years now.
2.5 years. I just started because she got me into it.
My boyfriend actually watches it every morning and every night, so I kind of just started watching it with him, and I love it. I mean, it's the only way that I find my news.
Looking through YouTube, looking for political shows that look cool.
I came across a very angry rant from Cenk, and that's when I knew.
So I was immediately in love with the show.
And then I haven't missed a live show since then.
10 times a day, I watched the show in the morning. Whenever I had a bad day at high school, Young Turks.
Man, Cenk is just so blunt and honest, and I love the honesty, and there's no BS behind the news, and they just tell everything like it is.
There's nobody censoring them. There's nobody there to say you can't do this, you can't say that.
That feel of authenticity makes it seem like what they're saying is true.
I feel like I get the real story from the Young Turks.
I am TYT.
I am TYT.
I am TYT. I am TYT.
I am TYT.
I am TYT.
Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news, let's do it.
All right, let's get to it.
40% of Canada's trade goes over the Ambassador Bridge that they have blocked. What about the working people, the hardworking people who've gone to work every day during this pandemic and now can't get to work or can't work because there's no parts in their factory to work with?
Tomi Lahren and Geraldo got involved in a heated debate about the so-called Freedom Convoy, which includes Canadian truckers demonstrating against vaccination mandates and other measures meant to protect people from coronavirus, which means I think it might be time for a cat fight. Now, what was fascinating about this exchange, well, there are many fascinating things. Number one, you have Geraldo on this streak of saying reasonable things on Fox News. I'm curious when they're gonna let him go, because they don't really play with that. So we'll see what happens. But more importantly, Tomi Lahren has adopted a trend that we're seeing in the right wing, where they co-opt populist, pro-worker language and apply it to their own causes, when in reality, they're usually not there for workers when they're striking for better working conditions or for better pay. So without further ado, let's hear what Tomi Lahren had to say in support of these demonstrations in Canada.
I think we're starting to see those actually essential workers stand up for their rights and their freedoms. And these are people that are the forgotten Canadians, and also here in the United States, the forgotten Americans that normally just sit down, shut up, and do their job. Well, that is until for 2 years you infringe on their ability to do their job, you infringe on their medical rights and their health freedom. Then they're going to stand up. You've poked the bear, you've poked the beast, and that beast is awake now, and people are going to listen. Governments are going to have to listen, because these are the actual essential workers that can shut down Canada, can shut down the USA too. A new kind of shutdown that the elites will not be able to ignore. Listen, the demonization of the working class, the blue collar folks that keep Canada and keep the United States and keep the world running, has to end. And this is part of the frustration.
Yeah, I found that to be an interesting statement. Well, what does actual essential workers mean? So when it comes to our frontline healthcare workers and nurses, the very individuals who have not gotten a single break during this pandemic, asking people, please get vaccinated, please, our hospitals are overwhelmed during every COVID surge due to unvaccinated patients, please get vaccinated. Do those essential workers matter at all? Because she keeps saying actual essential workers, and a common misconception that I keep seeing play out both in corporate media and among the right wing is that the demonstrators are blue collar, working class Canadians. Well, no, it turns out that a lot of them are actually the owners of the trucking companies. I'll give you one statement from Harold Yonker, who's a trucking company owner. He said this to BBC. We want to be free, we want to have our choice again, and we want hope, and the government has taken that away. David Dole from the Rational National was on the show yesterday, and he was talking about how this is mostly organized by the right wing, funded by the right wing, and the individuals who are taking part in this are in fact the owners of these trucking companies, and others have now joined in, but the people who have joined in are very much against regulations pertaining to COVID.
Yeah, so look, people are complicated and this story is complicated, both for Geraldo and the story overall. So in terms of the convoy, there's parts of it that I love. And I don't know if that surprised you, but it shouldn't, because it's direct action and it hits people where it matters in economic interests. And that's why it's gotten so much attention, because once you affect the dollars and cents, it moves people, right? And of course, the part I don't like is that it's on the most absurd, useless cause, right? I want the right to make other people sick. That's the thing you got organized for? Jesus Christ, imagine if we did a convoy for higher wages, for truckers. That would get a lot of people's attention.
Right.
And then maybe we could have a conversation about that, and that would actually help all truckers. Right?
I mean, there's been so many strikes and there's been a lot of labor militancy lately in the United States. And I haven't seen a lot of support from Tomi Lahren or anyone else on the right. And look, Jake, to your point, whether we agree with the cause or not, I support protesting. So I'm not against the notion of these individuals going out there demonstrating and making their voices be heard, but it's the way in which they're carrying it out. The fact that they're going out of their way to harass people living in Ottawa who still want to wear masks, right? They want to protest in order to protect their freedom, but they don't in any way value or respect the freedom of other individuals who feel more comfortable wearing masks. Like, what is the issue here? And look, I think that Geraldo actually did a pretty decent job in debunking much of what Tomi Lahren had to say there. So why don't we hear his side of the story?
Well, I think, first of all, that Tommy is way too kind to the freedom convoy, so-called. One man's freedom is another man's oppression. Their behavior has been nothing short of thuggish. In Ottawa, they've kept people in the neighborhood awake all night, revving their engines, blowing their horns. They've deprived Ottawa businesses of tens of millions of dollars. Now they're blockading the international bridges. They are laying off people, cutting their shifts short in automotive assembly plants because they can't get the parts from Canada to the United States. They used their crowbars to threaten cops who were going to tow their trucks away that were blocking. They've told tow truck drivers that they'll remember them when this is all over. A clear intimidation tactic. To give them the mantle of freedom fighters is absolutely appallingly naive.
Listen, the demonization of the working class, the blue-collar folks that keep Canada and keep the United States and keep the world running has to end. And this is part of the frustration.
I just, like, the adoption of rhetoric that's meant to value workers and protect workers, it really frustrates me because, again, like, where was Tomi Lahren when John Deere workers were striking? There's a concrete worker strike taking place in Seattle right now. It's been taking place for nearly 3 months. No attention on that 100%. At all, 0%. They're not in any way economic populists, okay? They think people who strike are bums usually. You know?
Yeah, no, Anna, this is such a great point, especially about the construction workers, let alone so many other strikes that have happened that they derided. Okay, so in reality, look, there is one thing here that I'm happy about, which is that the right wing is beginning economic protests, whether they mean to or not, whether it's on an issue that makes sense or not. And the reason why that's a good trend is because when the left wing does it, the media just ignores it. They think the left wing is totally irrelevant and to be hated and treated with disdain. So the left wing does a teacher strike, a construction strike, any strike at all, and they're like, no, not gonna cover it. Nah, don't care. Oh, you're doing protests of pipelines, won't cover it for months, right? The right wing does a protest, they have to take it seriously because they've been kissing right wing ass for decades. They don't know how to not kiss right wing ass. So they're like, oh, the right wing is doing, this must be serious and important. Let's give you both sides. Well, okay, good. Now we, on the other hand, are principled. Blocking roads, I think it's perfectly acceptable. Is it a giant pain in the ass? Yes, it is. But that's what a protest is supposed to do. It's supposed to make you uncomfortable, draw attention, so you go, hey, let's focus here. Harassing people, not acceptable. So the stories coming out of Ottawa where they're trying to rip people's masks off. There's a fire that was lit in an apartment building that was complaining about the noise at night, etc. That's typical right-wing lunacy and totally unacceptable.
Yeah.
And remember, I don't agree with their stance at all, but we're gonna protest too, and we also protest on things that matter, wages, healthcare, protecting your community, and sometimes we block roads. And and when we do that, of course, the entirety of the media, 200% of the media says, how dare they? This is criminal and unacceptable. And Geraldo's also complicated because he's going with the pro-business line here. They're disrupting the beloved business, avenues for distribution, etc. On the other hand, I've hated some of what Geraldo says in the past, but on the harassment stuff here, he's absolutely right. And he has been right on a couple of issues. So that's why, hey guys, and I'm saying this to both left wing and right wing, maybe we don't cancel everyone because you never know. He might be terrible on one issue and then have a really interesting and important take that he brings to a conservative audience on Fox News.
So I just want to respond to how corporate media doesn't cover certain protests while it loves to cover others. So they're all over this trucker thing. They've been covering it from the very beginning. But this isn't a labor protest, right? The corporate media doesn't pick between right or left. They pick between labor or circus, right? And this trucker protest has become a circus and they love it and they're focused on that. Look, the John Deere workers were not left-wingers. Let's keep it real.
Yeah, that's a great point, but it was an economic protest.
Yeah, that's
against
what I'm trying
big
to say.
business.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
And big media will always support big business.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So, all right. With that said, though, I want to fill in some more details in regard to what Geraldo was saying there. First off, it's absolutely true that there are people in that community in Ottawa who have been harassed by some of these demonstrators. Let me give you a few examples. One person said, "I just don't feel safe to be here." This is Justin Romanoff, who travels downtown every day to work as a food delivery driver. "I do not feel safe in downtown Ottawa right now because I have a feeling if people will learn that I'm a refugee and a gay, I'm afraid of some trouble there. I'm afraid of some trouble there. And to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed that this protest is still happening across Canada." And he has good reason to be worried because you should take a look at one of the main organizers for this demonstration. This is the gentleman I'm talking about. Let's take a look at Patrick King.
Trudeau, someone's gonna make you catch a bullet one day. To the rest of this government, someone's gonna you in.
You might want to change your name to Ishmael. Or drop a bunch of change down the stairs and call yourself Chong Ching Ching Chang. Now you want to say, oh, the Indians' culture and everything. The natives' culture is a disgrace. It is 100%.
That's right, Al. I've seen the mosque up in Fort Mac. Ladies and gentlemen, we are being overrun. The Anglo-Saxon people of Canada are our God-given culture. The Anglo-Saxon and the Francophones. We are losing our culture to other ethnic religions.
So when one of your main organizers has that kind of ideology, it's going to, look, fish rots from the head down. It's going to trickle into the demonstration itself. One woman, a nursing student living in downtown Ottawa, who requested anonymity over fears for her safety, told NBC that she had been accosted multiple times for wearing a mask by people appearing to belong to the Freedom Convoy. They're targeting anyone who's wearing a mask, anyone who's respecting public health policy. I myself have been accosted at least 3 times. I had one man try to rip my mask off. I've been screamed at. I've been told to go back to my country, she said, after someone heard her speak with an accent.
Yeah, right-wing, classy as always. So, by the way, why is this kind of mania spreading in Canada? Canada is historically much more progressive than America, and that's why the right wing in this country oftentimes hilariously blame Canada for anything that goes wrong. And there's a whole song in South Park over it because it's so absurd and fairly consistent that Republicans do in attacking the progressives in Canada, right? So now we've got the lunacy taking hold there. Now, is it because there's never any right-wingers and all of a sudden there are? No, of course there's right-wingers in Canada. There have always been. There's been areas, regions of Canada that are more right-wing than others, some of the oil-producing areas, et cetera, right? But now they have developed the same strain of madness as in America. And my theory on why that is because in the past, all they got was traditional media, television, radio, and newspapers. And Canada regulates that much more strictly than America does. So the Canadians wouldn't even get Fox News because the Canadian government said that's propaganda, it's not true, so we're not gonna give it to you as news, right? And so their minds weren't poisoned with corporate propaganda and they were more progressive. Now, because of the internet, they're also going online and going, oh, I heard that ivermectin and the mask and the nonsense and blah, blah, blah and QAnon. So now, great, our right-wing media has begun to poison the right wing in Canada and turn them from right-wing into lunatics.
Always happy to export our best qualities.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, well, we gotta take a break. When we come back, don't worry, the CEO of REI is engaging in union busting, but he does make sure to announce his pronouns before doing so. We've got that story and more when we come back.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT! TYT! The place is like 95% TYT on.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel. we're getting that message out.
Cenk and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
The people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think, one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army, there might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
Across the map are going to be so tight and so close that it is likely going to be very difficult to call this on election night.
The twin forces behind the Biden candidacy, the billionaires and the Bolsheviks.
Arizona, 19 million. For the vice president, 9 million, a little over 9 million for President Trump.
We are desperate for Donald Trump to not be president anymore because he's fascist and is a threat to our democracy. And we said that from day one. Yes, we want Biden to beat Trump. Is that clear enough?
It is increasingly difficult for the American public to get any sort of truth.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that. People are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different waves. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights, or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry? All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Forward.
Workers over at REI are attempting to unionize, and the CEO is not too happy about it. Now, this is a common story, especially when it comes to any labor-related issue. But what made this one stand out is how, Eric Artz, who is the CEO of REI, decided to co-opt the kind of language that you would hear from, let's say, corporate Democrats, meant to give you the illusion of progressivism, when in reality what they really represent is anything but. So let's listen.
For those of you who I have not had the chance to meet, I use he, him pronouns, and I'm speaking to you today from the traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples. So when people ask, why don't we support unions? My answer is simple. We do not oppose unions. It's that we don't believe, I do not believe, that introducing a union is the right thing for REI. And more specifically, I believe the presence of union representation will impact our ability to communicate and work directly with our employees and resolve concerns at the speed the world is moving. I'm concerned about a union presence in Soho or frankly any of our stores.
So again, let's start this off by giving a nod to indigenous people, mentioning my pronouns. Now I'm gonna tell you why I'm gonna crush your efforts or attempt to crush your efforts to unionize. And it's just, listen, I obviously do not have a problem with people announcing their pronouns. That's not what this is about. However, I do have a problem with the theater and the optics that get used by the very people who have no interest in providing real equality for people, economic opportunity for people, a better working place for people. In the context of Congress, I mean, the example I love to give is the goofy theater of members of Congress kneeling, Democrats specifically, kneeling wearing kente cloths.
Yeah.
And then doing nothing about police reform. That was following the George Floyd murder, by the way.
Yeah, I think this issue is actually complicated, but I 100% agree that the theater is what drives me nuts. My pronouns are he, him. Who asked you, dude? In this context, why are you telling me that? And I'll go further than that. And they go ahead, get angry and all that stuff. If Anna starts with my pronouns are he, him, that's relevant, and you respect that, right? If I start with it, you go, why are you randomly bringing that up now, right? When we're talking about a union drive, why are you telling me your pronouns? It's so I know some people just do it regularly. They do it in every conversation. I'm gonna have a blue cheese salad and I'm he, him. Okay, but it's not for me. I'm too old school, right? It doesn't mean you have to be a weirdo right winger and be like, no, I don't respect your choices, and no, I don't respect your gender. No, I deeply respect it, and I'm happy to give you any pronouns you like. But why are you saying it in this context? And why are you telling me you're on Native American land? What does that have to do with any of this?
Yeah, exactly.
Because what he's trying to do is theater.
Make
right?
you think he's a good guy.
Yes.
I'm a good guy. I believe in progressive values. Like, don't be mad at me. I'm just going to crush your efforts to unionize. Like, that's the thing. Like, the juxtaposition is important here. It's like a perfect illustration of what you see in so many other issues. Okay, not just in the context of a company attempting to unionize, but also more importantly, what you see in Congress more than any other place on the planet.
Yeah, and so look, the reason why I say it's complicated is because on the actual substance of the issue, I don't necessarily agree that he's looking to crush the union, right? So he doesn't agree with the union at his workplace. He's the CEO. I think he has every right to make his case, okay? And it's a co-op, and it's generally more left-wing, but in a real substantive way, not just the he, him, Native American lands way, right? Not the theatrics, but there's real, substance behind it at that particular workplace. Okay, now, and by the way,
hold on. You called it a co-op. I think we need to be very clear about what that means, because he doesn't refer to it as like a workers' co-op. It's a consumer co-op, and I don't know what that means. Like, what is a consumer co-op?
See, all of this is relevant, right?
Sure.
And you should discuss all of that. In fact, that leads me to the other point I was going to say. So when I heard what he was saying, and I listened to it, right, and I give everybody a fair hearing. I thought is going in when he was first talking about, how good a place it is to work, et cetera. And that might be true, I don't know, right? Then he made it seem like, it's this little operation that they've got going. And to me, that makes sense, because sometimes size matters in terms of, are you ready for a union or not ready for a union, et cetera. So I looked it up. Their revenue last year, I'm not talking about their overall worth, just their revenue just last year. 2.75 billion. It's not a little operation. So that's why, like, if he made, to me, I'd be super fair about it. If he made a real case saying, hey, look, this is why I don't think the union is right for us. Okay, it is what it is, and we could disagree with that. We might agree with that. But when you come in with the theatrics, and then you just, oh shucks, I'm the little guy, and you're making billions of dollars, don't tell me you can't afford it.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So just to give you his statement, REI is proud of its progressive policy. The retailer of outdoor clothing and equipment operates as a consumer cooperative, a structure that, according to its website, allows it to set goals before profits. What are the goals? The goals are tied to the profits. It's like a weird statement. Anyway, the Seattle-based company highlights the flexible schedules, so does Uber, by the way, the health services available to its hourly paid retailers, and each year it closes its approximately 170 US retail stores on Black Friday to give employees a paid day off.
So look, it's nice. It's also a little bit of theatrics, but I'm glad they do that. That's
I'm not saying it's bad, but the workers want more. And by the way, the workers are concerned about what's happened to the company's culture during the pandemic. They say that it's completely changed, and they're concerned, right? They're worried about their job safety and things like that. Those are legitimate concerns, and continue.
Yeah, and last thing on this is that, look, unions often organize at more progressive companies because it's easier, because, well, why don't you live by your creed, they say. And then sometimes they get frustrated because then they leave the Amazons alone, the $1 trillion companies, when that would be fruitful territory, to say the least. Okay, that doesn't mean you shouldn't organize progressive companies, okay? And so in this case, when REI is a relatively progressive company, compared certainly to other corporations, okay? Now, having said that, like I said, it's not a mom and pop shop, okay? So that's where I think it becomes disingenuous. Yeah, it's not a $1 trillion company like Amazon, but when you're making $2 to $3 billion in revenue per year, you're a pretty giant company, and you could certainly afford to unionize.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we have another awesome ad by Gary Chambers. We'll be right back.
You are the media and you are much needed.
TYT! TYT!
The place is like 95% TYT army.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Cenk and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
All the people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army, there might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
Across the map are going to be so tight and so close that it is likely going to be very difficult to call this on election night.
The twin forces behind the Biden candidacy, the billionaires and the Bolsheviks.
Arizona, 19 million. For the vice president, 9 million, a little over 9 million for President Trump.
We are desperate for Donald Trump to not be president anymore because he's fascist and is a threat to our democracy. And we said that from day one. Yes, we want Biden to beat Trump. Is that clear enough?
It is increasingly difficult for the American public to get any sort of truth.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that. People are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different ways. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry? Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Chaplain Fred, aka Prayer Dragon, wrote in on Super Chat. Hi, Anna and Cenk. It's always a privilege to be part of your audience. I have 25 nurses and 10 doctors coming over to my house for the movie screening tonight.
Wow.
Oh my God, I love that. Yes, look, it's just $15, but you can invite as many people as you want to your house and you guys can all share it. It's happening tonight. It's our first movie ever. It's with legendary producers Adam McKay and Chris Smith. It tells the story of how corporate CEOs got away with what drug dealers on the street couldn't. It's a heartbreaking story in a lot of ways. But by the way, in the Q&A, there's a massive surprise that is actually really good news. I'm doing it with the star of the movie. That's all tonight. It's at 8 o'clock Eastern, right after the show. You can buy tickets right now. It's the first time that anybody's seeing it. And you can buy the tickets at tyt.com/screening, tyt.com/screening. I'll see you guys there tonight. All right, Anna.
Gary Chambers, who is definitely known for running ballsy campaign ads, is running for Senate in Louisiana. And his latest ad does not pull any punches. Let's watch.
They said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. But here in Louisiana and all over the South, Jim Crow never really left, and the remnants of the Confederacy remain. In 1873, when a black man named PBS Pinchback won a U.S. Senate race, he was never seated. They claimed election fraud. The attacks against black people, our right to vote, and participate in this democracy are methodical. Gerrymandered districts are a byproduct of the Confederacy. Our system isn't broken. It's designed to do exactly what it's doing, which is producing measurable inequity. 1 in 13 black Americans are deprived of the right to vote. 1 in 9 black Americans do not have health insurance. 1 in 3 black children live in poverty. It's time to burn what remains of the Confederacy down. I do believe the South will rise again, but this time it'll be on our terms. I'm Gary Chambers and I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I approve this message.
So anyone who might be listening to the podcast version of the show, he burns a Confederate flag in that ad. And I love it. I love it. It's super powerful. Very curious to see how it plays out in a state like Louisiana. But it was courageous. It was brave, and it was a risky move that I really appreciate and respect.
Yeah, so look, I'm really proud that a lot of you saw Gary Chambers for the first time on TYT. He had done a speech at a local council event, and we featured that. Then we had Gary on as a guest, and then we had him on as a guest host. And I thought, this guy is amazing. And then he ran for Congress, and he did shockingly well. So I try to help him there. And unfortunately, a lot of progressives did not step up for him in his congressional run. And he barely lost. He did so well and all on his own. This guy's an unbelievable fighter. This is exactly the kind of guy we need, okay? So make sure that you're helping Gary if you're a progressive. Look at that. You think a guy who does that ad is gonna listen to Democratic leadership when they tell him, no, Gary, it's not time for higher wages. No, Gary, it's not time for healthcare for everyone. No, Gary, it's not time for voting rights. No, he's gonna go fight. That's why the media will despise him. It is not very civil to burn a Confederate flag. Goddamn right it isn't. Way to go, Gary.
Yeah, I love the imagery there. All right, I also wanted to give you some more context about what's happening in Louisiana in regard to gerrymandering, because much like states like Alabama, there is gerrymandering taking place that specifically places black voters in like one district, okay, where the majority happens to be black voters. So the ad's release, which by the way, the ad is titled Scars and Bars, coincides with the state legislature's ongoing special session to redraw the state's political lines, in which activists are campaigning for an expansion of majority black districts. Chambers led a rally for that very cause on the steps of the Louisiana Capitol steps on Wednesday morning, and that's according to the Daily Advertiser. Lawmakers, by the way, will have until February 20th to redraw the state's congressional districts. Census data show that roughly 1/3 of the state's population identifies as black, but only one of the state's 6 congressional districts has a majority minority population. Again, very similar to the story that we covered about Alabama and its gerrymandering.
Yeah, and he said a couple of things in that ad that were really important substantively, and I don't want you to lose track of it because of the Confederate flag burning that draws so much attention. That's good. I'm glad he had the courage to do that. No, damn right. You burn swastika flags if you want, and Confederate flags. So that stood for slavery, and I don't care anyone who sheds a tear about burning a Confederate flag. Okay, but he also made substantive points about, hey, gerrymandering was exactly for racist reasons. It sprung from the Confederacy to try to deny black people to vote. And the person he talked about there that had won the seat to go to Capitol to represent Louisiana was just denied the seat. And why? They claimed voter fraud. Yeah, black people were so in charge back then that they were able to do voter fraud and get away with it. It's absurd. Of course it wasn't voter fraud back then, and of course it's not voter fraud now. It's just an excuse to be racist. So that's why I love what Gary's doing, because they're not gonna be able to tell him to shut up and sit down. It's just not gonna work. And of course, everyone who goes to Congress, the very first thing is that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer tell them to shut up and sit down. And no, we're not gonna get voting rights. We just want you to cheerlead for us anyway. We need more Democrats. Good, we'll send Gary, see how you like that. By the way, if you wanna help him, chambersforlouisiana.com. chambersforlouisiana.com. We'll put the link down below later if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, because that's a progressive who's gonna fight for you.
All right, moving away from substance to Marjorie Taylor Greene. So Marjorie Taylor Greene is a very special person.
You are the media, and you are much needed.
TYT, TYT.
The place is like 95% TYT on.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Cenk and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
The people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think, one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army, there might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
Across the map are going to be so tight and so close that it is likely going to be very difficult to call this on election night.
The twin forces behind the Biden candidacy, the billionaires and the Bolsheviks.
Arizona, 19 million For the vice president, 9 million, a little over 9 million for President Trump.
We are desperate for Donald Trump to not be president anymore because he's fascist and is a threat to our democracy. And we said that from day one. Yes, we want Biden to beat Trump. Is that clear enough?
It is increasingly difficult for the American public to get any sort of truth.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that. People are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different waves. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry?
Every week, Marjorie Taylor Greene somehow finds a way to prove to the American people that she is the dimmest member of Congress. This time, she made a little bit of a mistake when trying to fearmonger about Democrats and how they're allegedly spying on Republican members of Congress. Let's hear what she had to say.
Not only do we have the DC jail, which is the DC gulag, but now we have Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police spying on members of Congress, spying on the legislative work that we do, spying on our staff, and spying on American citizens that want to come talk to their representatives. This government has turned into something it was never meant to be, and it's time to make it end.
Listen, I actually think she's drawing attention to a very real problem in this country, a grave concern. Have you ever had gazpacho that isn't cold enough? Lukewarm gazpacho?
No.
You can't eat it.
No soup for you.
No soup for you.
Or in this case, no coup for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm generally not in favor of cold soup, except Turkish cucumber yogurt soup.
Oh yeah, that is actually very good.
It is good. No, look, guys, it's fun to make fun of her because she doesn't know what she's doing. In fact, she stole my line that she's going to do in her own tweet that she did to kind of deflect here. But overall, the smallest problem I have with Marjorie Taylor Greene is mixing up the words. The ideas and the concepts and the attack on democracy is 10,000 times worse. So as we have fun with the story and everybody has fun with it, because you can't not have fun with it. She said gazpacho, right?
And of course she meant to say Gestapo.
Yeah, of course, right? But I'm afraid that sometimes people misinterpret it as talking down to them as opposed to talking down to Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's trying to abuse her power. If she was using that power for you guys, she can say gazpacho all day long, right? But she's just using it for her own benefit and the benefit of the rich and the powerful.
So I thought it was worth discussing like what she's even talking about, right? Like, did something happen to spark this, or is she just making something up completely out of whole cloth? Well, it has to do with an accusation that was put out this week by a Republican member of Congress, Troy Nehls, who believed that Capitol Police were spying on him, possibly with the help of Democrats. Let me give you a little taste of his tweets on this. He said, on November 20th, 2021, Capitol Police entered my office without my knowledge and photographed confidential legislative products protected by the speech and debate clause enshrined in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 6. Fascinating. What happened? Well, he says 2 days later, on Monday, November 22nd, Thanksgiving week, 3 intelligence officers attempted to enter my office while the House was in recess. Now, later he says, upon discovering a member of my staff, special agents dressed like construction workers began to question him as to the contents of a photograph taken illegally 2 days earlier. And he's referring to the photograph that was taken by Capitol Police earlier, right? And he continues to say that the Capitol Police never informed him or his staff of their investigation, and says that Capitol Police leadership is engaging in this like malicious investigation in an attempt to destroy him and his character. So I dismissed this Twitter thread immediately because I'm like, either this didn't happen, or if it did happen, there's a reasonable explanation. And guess what? there was a reasonable explanation, but before he realized there was one, he of course needed to take a few jabs at Nancy Pelosi. Maybe it is because I have been a vocal critic of Speaker Pelosi and the January 6th committee and Capitol Police leadership about their handling of January 6th, the death of Ashley Babbitt and the subsequent sham investigation. Okay, so very classy guy. Turns out that Capitol Police did investigate because he made a big mistake. He left his office open and left. And when that happens, it leads to a security concern because you have, confidential or you have private documents in that office, right? So as a result, Capitol Police have to investigate that. So if a member's office is left open and unsecured without anyone inside the office, USCP officers are directed to document that and secure the office to ensure nobody can wander in and steal or do anything else nefarious. The weekend before Thanksgiving, one of our vigilant officers spotted the congressman's door was wide open. And guess what? What they found in the office alarmed them. The officer filed a report raising concerns about the contents of the whiteboard, which included mentions of body armor and a poorly drawn map of the Rayburn House office building, which is also part of the Capitol complex and had an X at one of the building's entrances. So they, of course, had to investigate that. They were concerned that, here's a Republican member of Congress who's been very critical of this investigation into January 6th. Are there more plans moving forward to attack the Capitol? And once Nels was questioned about the whiteboard, he explained that the writing on the board, which included reports of faulty Chinese-made body armor, was related to legislation his office was working on, while the map of the Rayburn building, which Nels said looked like it was done by my 9-year-old, was drawn for an intern who was sent on a mission to find the ice machine. The X marked the spot. So there was a reasonable explanation. Capitol Police let it go after that, but it doesn't matter. It's an opportunity for Marjorie Taylor Greene and other Republicans to exploit for their fear-mongering about gazpacho.
To be fair, the Capitol Police statement did not write it as accurately as it should. Capitol Police officers dressed as construction workers went into the office. That's the part of the Nels story where I was like, here we go. They weren't dressed as construction workers.
Yeah, I'm not buying that either.
Or Native Americans or any other part of YMCA. Okay, so now look, normally I'd say, look, you're against the Capitol Police. They happen to come into your office and they happen to see a drawing that concerns them about Capitol Police. I'd say that's an interesting coincidence, right?
Yeah.
But these guys are lunatics. They have no credibility, right? So when they tell us that the construction workers saw their plans for raiding the vending machine, like maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know, right? It's nearly impossible to believe anything you guys say. And back to Marjorie Taylor Greene, this is her third reference to Democrats being Nazis. And before it was like wearing a mask is like the Jews wearing a star during the Holocaust. The Jews wearing stars then were put in the gas chambers and murdered. Okay, you wearing a mask is so that other people don't die. Anyways, you guys know that these guys have trouble with their mental stability. So if you want credibility, whether you're Nels or Green, and for us to believe you on any story, you might try to be not so insane. And so if you tell us that there's Jewish space stations that create forest fires, it's hard to take you seriously when you tell us about the horrors of the gazpacho.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't like when we're laughing at her, which is quite often, to be sure. She wants us to laugh with her, so she tried to deflect by tweeting this later. No soup for those who illegally spy on members of Congress, but they will be thrown in the goulash.
See, that pisses me off because that's the joke I was gonna go with because she said gulag too.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, how about the gulag? And now when she takes it, I feel like, oh my God, my dad joke is that lame?
No, I actually thought that was well played, but I refuse to believe that she's the one who came up with it.
Okay, good. We refuse to believe that too, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Take that.
I'm skeptical. I mean, have you seen her try to formulate a sentence that makes sense?
Let alone a joke?
Yeah,
no.
come on. Yeah.
Okay, well, at least she had enough sense to have somebody help her with it. Trump would have been like, oh yeah? Oh, and I put it in the covfefe.
They call them dumps.
Massive dumps.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT! TYT!
The place is like 95% TYT army.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Cenk and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
All the people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think, one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army, there might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
Across the map are going to be so tight and so close that it is likely going to be very difficult to call this on election night.
The twin forces behind the Biden candidacy, the billionaires and the Bolsheviks.
Arizona, 19 million. For the vice president, 9 million, a little over 9 million for President Trump.
We are desperate for Donald Trump to not be president anymore because he's fascist and is a threat to our democracy. And we said that from day one. Yes, we want Biden to beat Trump. Is that clear enough?
It is increasingly difficult for the American public to get any sort of truth.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that. People are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different waves. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry?
Apparently, candidates running for Congress like the idea of bullying children. So, a Texas candidate and former teacher said that transgender children make her uncomfortable, and she's actually furious about the fact that she and other children are unable to bully them. If you don't believe me, check out this video featuring Shelley Luther, who's running for Texas's House District 62.
I don't know any other counties that are more Bible Belt conservative than this district, and it's the Overton window. They have AOC in Congress on the left. And what we have done is become comfortable with what is okay in our society. I am not comfortable with the transgenders, the kids that they brought in my classroom when they said that this kid is transgendering into a different sex. That I couldn't have kids laugh at them, like I couldn't have like other kids got in trouble for having transgender kids in my class. That's why I vote for school choice. And my opponent is completely against school choice. Thank you.
Okay, so look, that was insane. I think anyone who has a reasonable mind and heart knows that that's insane, including, by the way, the gentleman on the stage as she's making that statement. I want you to pay attention to his facial expression as she says, I don't like that kids can't make fun of them. No, we gotta watch it again. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
I know you're chomping at the bit. I know you have some thoughts, but we gotta watch it again. This time, don't pay attention to her. Pay attention to the guy on the stage.
I don't know any other counties that are more Bible Belt conservative than this district, and it's the Overton window. They have AOC in Congress on the left. And what we have done is become comfortable with what is okay in our society. I am not comfortable with the transgenders, the kids that they brought in my classroom when they said that this kid is transgendering into a different sex. That I couldn't have kids laugh at them, like I couldn't have like other kids got in trouble for having transgender kids in my class. That's why I vote for school choice. And my opponent is completely against school choice.
That was hilarious.
That was amazing.
Yeah. So now I couldn't even have the other kids laugh at them and bully them. And the guy's like, hey. That got his attention. And when I watched that clip the first time, I was like, did the volume go off? Because I think she realized that she'd clowned herself.
She stepped in it.
Yeah,
100%.
and then she paused for like 4 brutal seconds. Right? And then she's like, no, I'm sticking with it. And the real problem is the transgenders and how we can't mock them, okay? I mean, all the other kids were having fun mocking them and then they get in trouble for it. What the hell kind of country do we live in anymore, huh? Said Shelley Lex Luthor.
Yeah, seriously. No, and also, I think, look, obviously that statement overall, insanely ignorant. But what, like, if you really want that ignorant, like, the ignorance is crystallized in my mind when she says the phrase, kids are transgendering.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a terrible story, but it was hard, like, not to be amused by the depth of her ignorance, right?
Insanely ignorant.
Yeah, and then they bring the transgenders in here, and there's transgendering all over the place, and now we can't even bully them. I remember the good old days. I mean, we'd do much worse. Yeah, as the most evangelical, district. The one that is the most religious, and hence the one that would be the most hateful. That didn't used to be hence. People used to, I think, in the old days, follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, where he said, be decent to one another and turn the other cheek and help the poor and the needy. Now, like, the most evangelical district means the most hateful district. So sad.
Yeah, I mean, and also the other thing is, I remember, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the Covington kids, the right-wing media was just incessantly pointing fingers at Democrats for bullying the Covington kids, right? They were the ones who were in DC, they were protesting to ban abortions. Obviously, I don't agree with them, but they're high school students. And so I just think when you're dealing with kids, when you're dealing with minors, hands off, okay? Like, don't, but this woman is just like, when I was a teacher, I was super annoyed that I didn't get to bully these transgender kids. Like, it's insane. No, by the way, like, of course, we're talking about it. It's getting a little bit of attention. But Democrats are just such failures. Like, I'm just specifically thinking about their campaigning. They wouldn't exploit this situation. Like, and when I say exploit, use it to your advantage if you're running for office, right? Paint a picture of what Republicans really are. They won't do it.
Fight for your voters.
Yeah.
Fight effectively. I mean, look at what happened in Virginia. Terry McAuliffe, the dumbest, most corporate candidate you've ever seen in your life. Youngkin was a massive right-winger. And Youngkin said, just because, now they want to teach racism in the schools. This is the Democrats are doing a war on parents. The schmuck, McAuliffe, couldn't just turn around and go, no, you're doing a war on teachers. Teachers are supposed to teach math. And if you say 2 + 2 = 6 and we want you to teach that, you're doing a war on teachers. You're doing a war on math. And we're not gonna stand for it. We're gonna protect our kids. No, instead he was like, I'm sorry, I don't mean it, I don't know, okay. God, Democrats are so useless. If you're, look, that's a very Republican district, right? Democrat, what do you have to lose? Why don't you run super aggressive in that district?
Yeah, have some fun.
Right? Well, you know why? Because the national Democrats would take away your money. Go, no, we prefer civility, and the media would pile on and go, we prefer civility.
They wouldn't even support the Democratic candidate because they have a defeatist mindset, right? Like, of course, I mean, there's no way that the National Party would actually support that candidate. But one thing that I want you to know about this woman, Shelley Luthor, she's also very blunt about banning people from attending Texas schools just based on their race or their background. She once said, Chinese students should be banned from attending all Texas universities.
Oh, come on. And note, by the way, that in her speech that we showed you, one of her points of emphasis was school choice.
It's amazing. Yeah, amazing.
But that's the right-wing mind. They think, no, I have all the choice. You have none of the choice. I have all of the freedom. You have none of the freedom. No, that's not called freedom. That's called oppression. And she looks back at those days fondly. Look, I remember when Steve-O told a story, he used to be on air here, about when he was growing up in the 1970s and 80s here in America, right? And he's Asian. He said every day they would use Asian slurs against them. The other kids would. And it was that, and that's how they would just commonly refer to him. And it was just devastating to his psyche. Those are the days that she looks back on with nostalgia.
Yeah, totally.
Like, oh, when you saw an Asian kid, the only Asian kid in class, and you could just call him that name over and over again, and everybody would laugh at him. And Steve talked about that too. A girl thought that he was cute. They thought that, and then they made fun of the girl for liking the CH word, right? And the whole class laughed. Those are the days she looks forward to. Like, oh God, wouldn't it be great if we went back to those days? And by the way, that's not at all hyperbole, because she's not just talking about transgenders. We just read you the quote. She said, let's ban the Chinese from our colleges.
She's just a sad, hateful woman. Like, there's really no other way to say it. I mean, I pity her, because imagine what a miserable person you have to be to have that level of hatred in your heart.
And let me say one more thing from my perspective. What sucks is that she's run for office before and she's lost. She lost her last race by 13 points. Because of this clip, she's more likely to win, not less likely to win.
All right, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, some of my favorite stories, including Wordle saving yet another life. I'm not kidding. You wanna know the details. Come right back.
You know, old school to me from Jank. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? And I go, what are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong, I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck. But what makes you stop right before 40? You know, what makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. There's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
Heard of it? I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not f***ing, Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us.
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Kingsley.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies.
And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com, join, and free trial. I'm old school with the old folks.
Good
John,
man.
come back.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. News.
Wordle is literally saving lives. I'm not kidding. That's definitely the case when it came to one 80-year-old woman in Chicago who unfortunately was the victim of an intruder in her own home, and that intruder held her hostage. Now let me give you the details and then we'll find out how Wordle saved her life. Denise Holt woke up in the dead of night to a naked stranger standing just feet away. Armed with scissors, the man got into bed with the 80-year-old and then gave her a warning. If you talk, if you yell or scream, I'm going to cut you. Holt says that at that point, she was doing everything she could to survive and to not upset this guy to the point where he would stab her to death. The man who got a cut while breaking into the house then asked her to get into the shower with him. This is a super creepy and terrifying story. And he said that he wanted to take a shower because he wasn't warm. He then dragged the woman, still in her soaking wet nightgown, around the house as he disconnected phone lines. She said that the intruder was leaving behind a trail of dripping blood as he was injured from the broken glass. So eventually he took 2 knives from her kitchen and locked her in the basement bathroom. And she essentially was left there. She couldn't leave, she couldn't get out. She was denied requests for toilet paper, for medication. She was in pain as a result of that. I mean, just a horrendous, terrible story. Now, her family started to become a little concerned. Why? Well, it turns out that every day she does what many people across the country love to do. Send their Wordle score to their friends, right? And so apparently Denise Holt later says, I didn't send my older daughter a Wordle in the morning, and that was disconcerting to her. At that point, her older daughter, who lives in California, had gotten a little annoyed that her mother hadn't texted her score from the day's Wordle, a daily puzzle in which solvers have to figure out a 5-letter word in 6 guesses. Her other daughter, who lives in Portland, Oregon, was confused that her mother hadn't responded to or even read some of her text messages. And again, that was unusual behavior. So apparently, eventually they called the cops to, check in on her, see what was going on. And officers found her, freed her. It was 9:40 p.m. She had been trapped in her cold, tiny bathroom nearly 20 hours and held captive for almost 21 hours. And here's a delightful photo of the victim with her daughters, who is now, of course, safe and sound. And I think it's important to keep in mind that Wordle, while it might be a fun game to play, it could also save your life. We are not in any way paid or sponsored by Wordle or the New York Times, which bought Wordle.
Yes. All right. So I'm not a Wordle fan yet, so I'm not in the Wordle cult. That's like, it saves lives. Okay, you must play it. In this case, it apparently did. But I'm going to make a super rando point. So the guy broke into her house, and it was the scariest situation as you can imagine. He's naked. And so she's 80 years old. He climbed into bed with her, and he's got the scissors next to her. She had to be scared for her life. Then the shower, and he brings her into the shower with her clothes on, and then she's drenched in, obviously, and he walks her around the house. He's bleeding all over the place. So the guy clearly, at first I was scared to death of what was gonna happen to her, right? As I'm reading the story, although I know I saw the headline, but still I was like, no, don't get in the bed naked. Oh, God damn it, right? And so, but the guy has mental health issues without any doubt at all. And was she within her rights to shoot him when he entered the house if she had a gun? Of course, everybody would say she was within her rights, right? But I'm glad she didn't. And so that is not necessarily an evil guy, right? He's unbalanced. And so
he's mentally ill.
Yeah.
Fair. He could have killed her. I'm happy he didn't.
Yeah.
And I'm going to disagree with you. I would have much preferred to have a gun, 100%.
Yeah, I hear you. And if you're in that situation, of course you're going to want to protect yourself. There's no question. I would not blame anyone in that situation for doing it. I'm just glad that the gun wasn't in the house because he's alive right now. Otherwise, he definitely would not be alive. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Look, I've been open about this on the show. My views on gun ownership have definitely changed over the years. And I think I used to speak from a place of, being incredibly naive about things like home invasions because they were so rare. They ain't so rare anymore. Yeah. And so I believe that law-abiding, responsible citizens should have the right to own a gun for self-defense or protection. And I know in that situation, she got super lucky because her daughters are amazing, right?
Yeah, they're heroes, absolutely.
They really are because it's like, yo, what's up, mom? Where's your Wordle?
Yeah,
right.
Look, it's upside down world in that the intruders at all, what she had to deal with was awful. So I'm weirdly rooting for the intruder not to be killed, right? And I acknowledge that's weird, but
and look,
it's human.
You had something similar happen to you, so I see your perspective, and we have perspectives based on our lived experiences as well.
That's right. So we had a home intruder, and he had an addiction problem, and luckily we were able to fend him off long enough for the cops to arrive, tackle him, and arrest him, and he was ill. And yeah, I was within my rights to shoot him and kill him, but I'm super glad I didn't, right? Or stab him and kill him, and I'm super glad I didn't. He's alive today, right? And so everybody's different. That's my reaction. And it's easier for me. I have a little bit of privilege because I'm a big guy. I could defend myself a little bit better, although you can't defend yourself against a gun. And it's just a fact that guns in the house get more people killed. But I understand that visceral need to protect yourself, so I'm not judging on that front. But I want to mention one other ironic hero here. Ironic only because we have so often done legitimate criticism of them, especially in Chicago. But the police, because oftentimes they'll go, she's got to be missing for 24 hours. Then you can file a missing person report,
right?
And they go through all that BS because they don't want to work, right?
Which is why you should call and say, hey, can you do a welfare check? And cops, generally speaking, are pretty good about welfare checks. In fact, we called one for a neighbor fairly recently, and they were good about it.
And in this case, they went and checked on her.
Yeah.
And they potentially saved her life. So great job by the cops in this case. Credit where credit is due.
Definitely. All right, so I want to do a little tease for our bonus episode because it's going to be a really good one. Well, there's a story that Cenk really wanted to talk about that I'm like nervous about.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
A story that'll make you nervous.
It involves a rapper who is referred to as DaBaby. So we'll talk about that. But also, one of my favorite recurring stories has to do with individuals who have a lapse in judgment and end up destroying super valuable art. So we have another example of that, and it's kind of hilarious. So it's going to be a lot of fun. You can become a member, by the way, if you're not one, by clicking on that join button if you're watching us on YouTube or going to tyt.com/join.
Yes, and so I'm in the bonus episode, but I'm also in the Q&A for, am I in two places at once? Kind of. So tyt.com/screening for the first ever viewing of Oxy Kingpin's, incredibly well reviewed. Some of the best producers in the world on it. You're gonna love that movie. I want to do a lot more movies like this. It debuted at South by, and has gotten rave reviews. I think you guys are gonna love it. And it's about corporate wrongdoing and how they get away with it. But I want to tell you one more thing. In the Q&A, you guys are going to get a pleasant surprise, okay? And it's really good news, which doesn't happen that often. The movie's very emotional in parts. But the way that it tracks the drugs from the drug dealers on the street to the corporate CEOs, I think they did a perfect job with it. So I'm really proud of it. I hope you guys can check it out tonight. tyt.com/screening. In fact, it starts in just a couple of minutes. And then I wanted to give a shout out to a couple more people that wrote in. Dan Hensley said, indisputable and the doc deserve all the praise. I've been a member for only 3 or 4 months now, but every single TYT show is chef's kiss. I love politics, but it got depressing. But now my passion is back. Absolutely. Rashad's show is the fastest growing show in all of media. Make sure you're checking out Indisputable. It's amazing. And then finally, Grandma Sunshine Dragon said, hi, Cenk. Hi, Anna. Anna, I need a hello today.
Hey.
There you go, mission accomplished. All right, members, we'll see you in the post game.
I've been a fan of TYT, I believe, for the last 6 years.
5 years.
3 years now.
7 years. 4 years now.
2.5 years. I just started because she got me into it.
My boyfriend actually watches it every morning and every night, so I kind of just started watching it with him, and I love it. I mean, it's the only way that I find my news.
Looking through YouTube, looking for political shows that look cool.
I came across a very angry rant from Cenk, and that's when I knew.
So I was immediately in love with the show.
And then I haven't missed a live show since then.
10 times a day, I watched the show in the morning.
Whenever I had a bad day at high school, Young Turks.
Man, Cenk is just so blunt and honest, and I love the honesty, and there's no BS behind the news, and they just tell everything like it is.
There's nobody censoring them. There's nobody there to say you can't do this, you can't say that.
That feel of authenticity makes it seem like what they're saying is true.
I feel like I get the real story from the Young Turks.
I am TYT.
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 Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.